Hey birdies, and welcome back to Blonde Buzzard Books. Today is going to be part 2 of recapping everything that I read in my 4-month absence from YouTube. So today we're going to go over every book that I read in April and May of 2026. As usual, we will be rating them from least liked to most liked, starting with the dishonorable mentions, the DNFs. This time, there is only one DNF, and it's not really a dishonorable mention. Maybe dishonorable on my part. Probably dishonorable on my part. Let's talk about it. The first and only DNF of this period is going to be Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I don't want to talk about it, okay? Actually, I do. That's why I'm here on camera. I talked a lot in my last video about what I'm calling my cultural education, which is kind of where I am trying to incorporate books that are referenced all the time in other pieces of media, because there are certain things that I just feel like I'm missing out on because I haven't read, book X, Y, or Z. So Lord of the Flies is one of the books on that list. I think I approached this book incorrectly. I didn't come correct with Lord of the Flies, and that's a me issue. I decided to listen to the audiobook, and usually I am so locked in on audiobooks. I know that there is kind of a debate about whether or not audiobooks are a valid form of reading. I'm not here to start a debate about that, but I am here to say that my comprehension and memory of books is exactly the same regardless of whether it's an audiobook or a physical book. For me personally, I know that that's not the case for everybody. I'm usually locked into the audiobooks, okay? This one though, I had a hard time getting behind. I think part of it is because it's narrated by the author, William Golding, and that's really respectable and cool, and in a lot of cases I really like that. In this case, I had a hard time. To be honest with you, I couldn't pay attention, and I don't know. I wasn't rocking with it. So, I think I'm going to read a physical copy later. Just like Wuthering Heights, this is not really a DNF. It's just we're going to save this for later kind of thing. Moving on to the books that I did finish. The first book on this list that is going to be a 3-star rating from me is The Tenant by Frida McFadden. This book was lovingly included in my Easter basket from my fiance. It was very sweet of him. I read The Housemaid and I really enjoyed reading it. It was a really good change of pace because I usually read a lot of heavy and dark stuff. So reading The Housemaid was a fun little, change of pace for me because it was still suspenseful, but it wasn't so much. So I was really excited about this one, actually. The book is about a young engaged couple, and you guessed it, their tenant. Hey, there we go. So Blake, the man in the relationship, just lost his job. It was at a really good firm. I think it was maybe an accounting or finance firm. I don't really remember that part, but he lost his job, and because of that, he and his fiance can't afford their brownstone anymore, so they have to take in a tenant. At first, the tenant seems like a super nice girl, but in usual Frida McFadden style, some hijinks occur, and he begins to feel like she is not who she says she is, but his fiance doesn't see anything wrong. Overall, this book was fine. Okay? It was, it was exactly what I expected it to be. I was ready to give it 4 stars, literally until the epilogue. There's always a twist at the end of a Frida McFadden book that's just a given, and I did kind of predict the twist in this one, and I almost feel like Frida McFadden herself was a little bit self-conscious about people guessing the twist to this one, because on the last 3 pages in the epilogue, she includes this additional random twist that came out of left field. I feel like she was on her laptop no one's gonna be able to predict this, and it's yeah girl, because it came out of left field and makes no sense. So no, I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, there's that. It wasn't bad, it just was kind of, the ending was a little, I don't know. The next book on the list, which also got a 3-star rating from me, is Sundial by Catriona Ward. So this book came to me how a lot of books do, which is through shopping for the store. And I was just really hooked by the concept and the cover. The cover is so cool. So I read it, girl. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard for me to even really tell you what this book is about without spoiling anything because the plot is thick. Okay? There is so much going on in this book. It's unreal. So I'm going to start by saying something that sounds like a spoiler, but I can assure you it's not because it happens in chapter like 2 or 3. Rob, who is a family woman, is sent spiraling when her daughter Callie tries to murder her younger daughter. She's really unsure of what to do in this situation, and she's haunted by some demons of her own past. So she decides that she is going to take Callie out to Sundial, which is the ranch that she grew up on as a child. As the novel progresses, we flip back and forth between the timeline where Rob is a child and the timeline where Callie is a child. So we're getting some of the past and some of the present all at once. There's a lot to unpack about Sundial, the location. There's a lot to unpack about Rob. There's a lot to unpack about Callie. There's just a lot going on. I think that Catriona Ward is a good writer, and I think that the story had a lot of merit. Ultimately, I just think that it ended up being a little bit convoluted for me. It wasn't necessarily difficult to follow so much as I just almost got overwhelmed. Like, I felt like I was getting hit from all sides, and I needed, like, a breather. I think that's also because of the way that the timelines are structured. Personally, I think that it would have been a really good, like, 2-book series, because I think we could have started with the past timeline and then moved into the present, and it would have made a lot more sense and felt a lot more comfortable. The next book that I rated 4 stars is Slewfoot by Bram. To be honest with you, I wasn't particularly interested in this one until it started flying off the shelves here. We've sold so many copies, and I was like, you know what? I gotta know what the hype's about. What's the hype about? Slewfoot follows a woman named Abatha who is recently widowed. Her husband's death alienates her even further from her incredibly puritanical village. This is supposed to be in like colonial America, just for reference there, thinking like Salem witch trials vibes. Keep that in mind. Abatha is just really struggling to hold on to the little bit of freedom that she has when Samson enters her life. Samson is half man, half goat, and he's the devil from the Bible. Except, maybe he's not. Samson just woke up from a coma situation, so he doesn't actually know who he is. When the village people see him, they call him the devil, and he kind of thinks he might be the devil, but he also knows that he has a capacity for good, and he demonstrates that when he teams up with Abatha to help her regain some of her freedom in the village. So, yeah, together they both discover their true selves through their budding friendship. Really interesting concept. Very cool. And I will say, I did not expect to feel so philosophical about this one. I think I was expecting more like historical horror, which it is. What I was not expecting was it to be such a dissection of the differences between paganism and Christianity, which was really cool. I think that the novel also took an opportunity to raise a lot of questions of perception and what that does to your sense of self. Like, how many times can somebody tell you that you're bad or that you're good before you start believing it? That being said, I gave it 4 stars because I felt like the ending was a little bit drawn out. And I know after I just was like, it was so good. Like, that's such a silly thing to complain about. But, yeah, by the end of it, I was like, okay. The next book on this list is Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones, which I gave 4 stars. I read The Only Good Indians and loved it. I've been trying to work a little bit more of Stephen Graham Jones into my rotation because I'm very curious about his other works. This one is a novella. I read it in one sitting. The book follows Junior, who is a young boy who is convinced that he saw a vision of his dead dad in his house in the middle of the night. Over the next several days and weeks, he goes to increasingly alarming lengths to try to see his father again. Just based on that few sentences alone, you can kind of understand how the book was a little bit Pet Sematary nachos, you know? But that's okay. I'm not like, Pet Sematary nachos is technically Frankenstein nachos, so what really, where do we draw the line? But, I mean, yeah, a grieving and confused individual going to certain lengths to bring back a dead family member, but it comes at a cost, is definitely a familiar story. That being said, however, Stephen Graham Jones, I love his voice when he's writing. I just feel like the characters in his books, I've only read 2, so I'm not the most qualified to speak on this, but both of the books of his that I've read, I just felt like I really knew the characters. They felt like real people to me, which is really special because I don't think that everybody is good at that. The other thing is, there's always going to be like a deeply rooted cultural beauty in a story that Stephen Graham Jones writes. So, yeah, I mean, it is different because to me, it's more special. It's like deeper, if that makes sense. Instead of a basic like, ooh, Indian burial ground, we get like real legend, which I think is important. The next book on this list, we are now into 5-star territory, is Honeysuckle by Bar Friedman Tell. This book was completely a happy accident. I stumbled across it on Spotify and immediately was hooked, so I just threw it on, and I'm so glad that I found it. Honeysuckle follows a young boy named Rory who lives on a very isolated farm, ranch, estate is probably the word that I'm looking for, because they don't really have anything going on, they just have a lot of land. Anyway, he lives with his older sister and their housekeeper, and that's pretty much it. His parents left, and they have just hired the housekeeper and the tutor to take care of the kids. It's just the two of them. So one day, Rory is really getting on his sister's nerves, fair enough, so she makes him a Bladewed, which is a girl that's made out of flowers and like local fauna. She's made out of sticks and flowers and whatnot. Now, the Bladewed is a figure in folklore. I want to say maybe Polish folklore. Fact check me on that, Editing Grace. Gonna put the answer right here. Okay. Anyway, the Bladewed is a figure in folklore. So if you know the story of the Bladewed, you know where this is going. I, however, had never heard of that before in my life. So, needless to say, I was surprised by the plot of this movie. So, Day, this girl that's made out of flowers and sticks, is his playmate for life. Kind of. I'm getting there. At the end of summer, she almost falls apart, and Rory's sister has to put her back together. Rory's sister explains that it's because she's made out of local flora. It's not meant to last more than one season. She's meant to be a temporary thing. But Rory is like, put her back together now. So his sister puts her back together and continues to do that for a long time, okay? As they get older, their relationship begins to change, and Rory ends up accidentally on purpose dedicating his whole life to learning how to keep Day alive and to make the transitions each season easier, things like that. As he goes on trying to perfect her reconstructions, Day begins to wonder how much autonomy she really has. That being said, I did not expect to be so moved by this novel. I knew, that it was going to be kind of emotional and whatever, but this was like, it hurt me down to my soul. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. It was definitely uncomfortable at parts, but it's uncomfortable on purpose, and it's uncomfortable because it brings up an important conversation. Shout out Day, that's my girl. Rory, if I see you in a dark alley, you better watch out. Okay, the next and last book. Yeah, last already. Okay, I was really busy. I already told you I was busy. Listen when I'm talking to you. I was busy. Okay, the last book on the list is Yesteryear by Carol Claire Burke. The premise of this one was way too good for me to not read it. There was no way I was not reading this book, let's be serious. This novel is about a full-time mommy influencer trad wife who definitely resembles some real-life trad wives we have seen on the internet in recent times, who one day wakes up back in 1885. She has been making her own bread, making her own soap, drinking raw milk, all these different things on social media for so long, but now she really has to be about that life. And yeah, obviously there are some unforeseen consequences. Seriously, I would love to give you more of a summary than that, but that's it. That's the premise, and it is riveting from start to finish. That book was crazy. I loved the character study aspect of this book. There are so many characters that you can really like pick apart with your tweezers. I loved the setting. It's really beautifully written, and I loved the ending because I did not see the ending coming. Whoa. I have no doubt that this book is going to receive some flack online for being anti-Christian, for being anti-traditional family values, for making fun of people who drink raw milk. And I want to clarify for anybody who's on the fence about reading this book or not, I cannot stress enough that it's not a critique of being a traditional wife. This book is a critique of being someone you're not, and for trying to force yourself into a box that you don't actually want to go in. So, I'm just going to leave it at that. Also a criticism of putting your kid's face on the internet. There's that too. Seriously, loved this one. Can't recommend it enough. Lastly, I actually forgot about this. We must finish off with an unrated, unranked, honorable mention, which is The Hunger Games. Obviously, this is a 5-star read for me. It's been a 5-star read for me since I was like 12. I'm in the middle of rereading the series right now, so more to come on that, maybe. I think this is my 4th reread, and every time I read the series, I get something different from it, and that is, to me, just what's so beautiful and special about it. The characters in The Hunger Games are really near and dear to my heart, and you can call it a simple YA dystopian series like the rest of them, but you're wrong. So anyway, I finished that book too. And that is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye!